Hello, you absolute legends. Welcome to Historical Blunders, where we'll be digging deep into the archives of human error to unearth some truly magnificent mess-ups. Now, we all love a good tale of triumph and innovation. But let's be honest, folks, history is just as riddled with blunders as a drunkard's texting history after last call. From kings to inventors, emperors to managers, we're about to take a hilarious look at some decisions so baffling, so spectacularly wrong, they'd make a toddler with a bowl of spaghetti look like a strategic genius. Buckle up, buttercups, because this is going to be a wild ride through the annals of what were they thinking? Our first stop takes us back to 1849 with inventor Walter Hunt and his brainchild, the humble safety pin. This isn't just any pin, my friends, this is a safety pin. A revolutionary device designed to prevent accidental stabbings. Hunt, this titan of tidiness, decided to patent his ingenious creation, and why wouldn't he? It was a license to print money, a one-way ticket to being showered in piles of those big puffy 19th century hats. But here's where things take a turn for the tragically absurd. Walter sold the rights to his patent for a paltry $400 to settle a debt. The very same safety pin that went on to become a staple in households worldwide made someone else very, very rich. One can only imagine Walter, years later, watching the world embrace his invention, muttering through gritted teeth, "I could have had a hat, a big puffy hat, filled with money." It's a cautionary tale, really, a stark reminder that brilliance without business acumen can leave you with nothing but a pocket full of regret. Let's be honest, folks. Nobody in their right mind would willingly lug around giant blocks of stone in the scorching desert heat for fun. And yet the ancient Egyptians managed to build some of the most awe-inspiring structures known to man. How did they motivate their workforce, you ask? Well, it turns out, even back then, everyone understood the universal language of, "Show me the money, but hold your chariots, because we're not talking about gold coins or sacks of grain here." No, my friends, the ancient Egyptians had a far more intoxicating form of payment in mind: beer. Yes, you heard that right, beer. Apparently, the going rate for back-breaking, pyramid-building labour was 4 to 5 litres of beer per day. Now, I'm no historian, but that sounds like a recipe for a workplace safety violation waiting to happen. Just imagine the scene. Thousands of workers, fueled by gallons of ancient ale, attempting to manoeuvre multi-ton stones into place. Talk about a recipe for a wobbly pyramid. But hey, who am I to judge? Maybe those ancient Egyptians were onto something. After all, nothing says job well done like a refreshing pint of beer, even if your workplace happens to be a scorching desert and your boss is a giant, pointy monument to a dead pharaoh. Let's shimmy our way over to the 1950s, where the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, was busy shaking things up with his hip-swiveling antics and soulful voice. Now, behind every great artist, there's a savvy manager, right? In Elvis's case, that man was Colonel Tom Parker, a man whose greed-fueled decisions would make even the most hardened Wall Street tycoon blush. Picture this. Elvis, at the height of his fame, gets an offer to perform live on a little show called The Ed Sullivan Show, a cultural phenomenon watched by millions. This, my friends, was a golden ticket to global domination, a chance to win over hearts and minds across America. But Colonel Parker, in his infinite wisdom, saw things differently. He saw dollar signs, and not nearly enough of them. He demanded an appearance fee so astronomical, so laughably outlandish, that Ed Sullivan himself reportedly balked and said, "Well, that's fine, we'll just have a lot of sausage sandwiches on the show that night." And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how Elvis Presley, the biggest star on the planet, missed out on one of the most significant cultural moments of the decade. All because his manager, blinded by pound signs and a severe lack of foresight, priced him out of the market. It's a tale as old as time itself. Greed, my friends, can make even the most astute businessman look like a right plonker. Let's fast forward a few centuries to ancient China, where we meet Qin Shi Huang, the emperor with a hankering for immortality. Now, I get it. Nobody wants to shuffle off this mortal coil, especially not when you're the emperor of a vast and powerful empire. But Qin Shi Huang, bless his cotton socks, took this whole living forever thing to a whole new level. Obsessed with achieving immortality, he surrounded himself with alchemists and sorcerers, all promising him the elixir of life, the secret to cheating death itself. And these weren't your run-of-the-mill potion peddlers. Oh no, these guys were the real deal, brewing up concoctions that would make a health inspector spontaneously combust. Unfortunately for Qin Shi Huang, it turned out that chugging down gallons of mercury-laced elixirs wasn't exactly the recipe for eternal youth. In fact, it had quite the opposite effect. He ended up kicking the bucket at the ripe old age of 49, a cautionary tale about the dangers of trusting dodgy alchemists and their questionable life-extending beverages. The irony, of course, is that Qin Shi Huang achieved a different kind of immortality, not through some magical elixir, but through his colossal blunder. He became a legend, not for cheating death, but for being spectacularly bad at it. Now let's hop across the pond to 18th century England, where King George II was busy ruling over a burgeoning empire. He'd successfully navigated wars, political intrigue, and even managed to father 15 children. But it wasn't a battlefield or a cunning political rival that brought him down in the end. No, my friends, it was something far more mundane, far more relatable: constipation. Yes, you heard that right. King George II, the ruler of a mighty empire, met his untimely end while straining on the toilet. One can only imagine the scene: the king, resplendent in his royal pyjamas, battling a particularly stubborn bowel movement when suddenly, boom, he's pushing up daisies. It's a stark reminder that even the most powerful figures in history are subject to the whims of their own bowels. And perhaps a valuable lesson for us all to eat our fibre and maybe invest in a good plunger, because, let's be honest, nobody wants to go out like that. Buckingham Palace, renowned for its elegance, tradition, and the occasional corgi stampede, also housed a royal with a penchant for extremely questionable friendships. Enter Edward VIII, a man who seemed to have it all: charm, power, a snazzy hat collection. He was living the life most of us could only dream of until, well, he decided to throw it all away for love. Now, I'm all for a good love story, but this wasn't your typical fairy tale romance. This was a full-blown constitutional crisis waiting to happen. Why? Because the apple of Edward's eye, Wallis Simpson, was not only an American socialite, which in itself was scandalous enough for the time, but also a twice-divorced woman. The church, the public, and even his own mother were clutching their pearls in horror. But Edward, blinded by love, or perhaps by Wallis's impressive collection of fascinators, decided to abdicate the throne. And if that wasn't enough to make the history books, he then decided to embark on a jolly little tour of Nazi Germany, even meeting with Hitler himself. It's safe to say that Edward's post-abdication life choices were about as popular as a fart in a spacesuit. His Nazi-sympathizing escapades cemented his place as the black sheep of the royal family, a cautionary tale about the dangers of letting your heart, or perhaps your fascination with fascist dictators, rule your head. Queen Victoria, the epitome of stoic Britishness, the monarch whose name graces countless teacups and monuments, also had a rather, shall we say, complicated family tree. Now, royal families are notorious for their tangled branches and inbreeding, but Victoria's lineage took the proverbial biscuit. You see, she was a carrier of haemophilia, a genetic disorder that prevents blood clotting. And through a quirk of fate, or perhaps some mischievous cosmic irony, she managed to pass this gene onto several of her children, who then, in true royal fashion, married into various royal families across Europe. This led to a rather awkward situation, where Victoria earned the moniker the Grandmother of Europe, not just for her impressive progeny, but also for inadvertently spreading a genetic disorder throughout the royal houses of the continent. It's enough to make you want to reach for the smelling salts and a stiff cup of tea, preferably one that doesn't remind you of your own family's genetic quirks. Let's rewind the clock a bit to meet King George IV, a man whose appetite for extravagance was matched only by his talent for making questionable decisions. This, my friends, was the original party prince, a man who knew how to throw a lavish bash, complete with enough champagne and debauchery to make even the most seasoned hedonist blush. But George's taste for the finer things in life, his penchant for gambling and extravagant spending, didn't exactly endear him to the public. They saw him as out of touch, more concerned with his next lavish feast than with the plight of his people. And if his spending habits weren't scandalous enough, George also decided to engage in a little marital dispute that would make even the most dramatic reality TV star green with envy. He tried to divorce his wife, Caroline of Brunswick, on grounds of adultery, which would have been fine and dandy except for one tiny detail. George himself was a serial philanderer of Olympic proportions. The ensuing divorce trial was a public relations nightmare, a spectacle that captivated and appalled the nation in equal measure. It was a messy, drawn-out affair that only served to tarnish the already shaky reputation of the monarchy. Let's journey back to ancient Rome, where we meet Claudius, a man who defied all odds to become emperor, despite a rather unfortunate physical condition. He had a stammer. Now I know what you're thinking. A stammer? That's it? John, you've shown us kings who couldn't resist a Nazi photo op and emperors who poisoned themselves with immortality juice. Surely a little speech impediment isn't that big of a deal. And you'd be right in any other context. But in ancient Rome, where public speaking was an art form and a key part of political life, a stammer was seen as a sign of weakness, of mental instability. Claudius, despite his sharp mind and keen political acumen, was often overlooked, dismissed as a bumbling fool because of his speech impediment. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. After the assassination of his nephew Caligula, who, let's be honest, wasn't exactly known for his rational decision-making, Claudius found himself unexpectedly thrust into the role of emperor. To everyone's surprise, and perhaps to the chagrin of those who underestimated him, Claudius proved to be a shrewd and capable ruler. He expanded the Roman Empire, reformed the legal system, and even managed to conquer Britain. He showed the world that brilliance can come in all shapes and sizes, even with a stammer. Our final historical blunder takes us to the icy plains of Russia, where Napoleon Bonaparte, the military genius, the conqueror of nations, made a decision so catastrophically misguided, so monumentally boneheaded, that it would make even the most incompetent armchair general wince. In 1812, at the height of his power, Napoleon decided to launch a grand invasion of Russia. Now, invading Russia is never a good idea, even if you're a brilliant military strategist with an ego the size of the Kremlin. The vast distances, the brutal winters, and the general unwillingness of the Russian populace to be conquered make it a logistical and strategic nightmare. But Napoleon, blinded by his own hubris, convinced that he could conquer anything and anyone, pressed on. He marched his Grande Armée, a force of over 600,000 men, into the heart of Russia, confident of a swift victory. And then winter hit. The Russian winter is not for the faint of heart. It's a relentless, unforgiving beast that can freeze the snot in your nostrils before you can say borscht. Napoleon's army, ill-equipped for the harsh conditions, began to crumble. Supplies dwindled, morale plummeted, and the once mighty Grande Armée was reduced to a shadow of its former self. Napoleon's retreat from Russia was a disaster of epic proportions. He lost hundreds of thousands of men, not to glorious battles, but to starvation, disease, and the unrelenting cold. It was a humiliating defeat, a stark reminder that even the most brilliant minds can be undone by arrogance and a healthy dose of bad weather. Well, there you have it, folks. A whirlwind tour of some of history's most epic blunders. From safety pins sold for a pittance to emperors poisoned by their own immortality quests, we've seen that even the greatest minds can make spectacularly bad decisions. But hey, that's what makes history so fascinating, right? It's a reminder that we're all human, capable of both brilliance and boneheadedness in equal measure. So the next time you're feeling down about a mistake you've made, just remember, at least you didn't accidentally poison yourself with mercury, try to divorce your wife while simultaneously being a notorious philanderer, or invade Russia in winter. If you enjoyed this historical romp through the annals of human error, don't forget to like, subscribe and tell us about your favourite historical blunder in the comments below. Until next time, remember, the past is a foreign country. They do things differently there, and sometimes those things involve monumental screw-ups.